remarks. You know, AI in public space, Dr. Vivek Raghavan. We're looking for you. So, good to have you here. Very well known in the AIed space. We have Stack and many other things which we take it for granted.
Hi, thank you for having me here at this talk. And I was not exactly sure. So today my topic here is AI as a digital public good, and that's and I think that when I was first contacted with this, I was actually doing digital public goods. Now I'm doing something different. So therefore, but still, I think we're going to talk about AI as a digital public. Firstly, do you guys have an idea what a digital public good could be? Anybody has a thought on what a digital public would be? Okay, Aadhaar card. Firstly, why is an Aadhaar card a digital public good? A card seems like a physical piece of information. Why do you think it's a digital public good? Okay. Well, I think Aadhaar is an example. I don't think it meets all the requirements of a pure digital public good, but I think it is definitely something. Maybe we can do a show of hands here. How many people here have Aadhaar? Okay. Or maybe you should ask how many people don't have Aadhaar? It's really a question. Okay, there are a couple. Okay. So, but I think, see, this is an example. Certainly it is an example of a digital public good. Any other examples of a digital public good you can think about? Anything else? Maybe something you used to pay UPI, okay. Why do you think UPI is a digital public good? So, what is the property? I think you see, it's interesting, right? Something like Aadhaar is actually run by the government, okay? And other people use those services. Do you know who runs UPI? Does anyone know who runs UPI? Huh? Yeah, so there is something called the National Payment Corporation of India, NPCI, actually runs UPI. Okay? But UPI, it's a quasi-government organization. But what it does is it creates this kind of switch at the back end, which allows all different systems to interoperate with each other. That's why you don't care whether you're using PhonePe or you're using Google Pay or you're using whatever else that you want to do something. And the whole point is that here what has happened? You've actually created a common protocol which different systems. So therefore in fact that is really the power of UPI, right? We don't care which app you have, right? How is that different from something like, say, let's talk about the platforms, right? Let's take a platform like Facebook, right? Or Instagram, right? Can you talk to somebody else on Instagram if you're not on Instagram? Okay, that is a platform, right? So therefore, you must be on the platform to actually take benefit of a platform, right? That's one thing. But on the other hand, let's think about something else. Let's think of a phone, right? And you call somebody. Do you really care whether you're using Jio or you're using Airtel? So their telecom is a protocol, is a local protocol that everybody is using, and therefore you have an interoperable system. So I want people to think between the differences between systems where systems are open or where you must be part of the platform to actually take benefit from that system. So that's it. So I just wanted to maybe somebody else, any other thing that you could think of which could be a public good, a digital public good.
Databases.
A database.
Open source databases.
Okay. But how, I suppose the important thing is that, give me an example. I am actually not aware of openly available database, which is there. I mean, it would be interesting, but what do you think is.
Like databases like rankings coming.
Okay, fine, yes, okay. So basically collections of data which are openly available for anybody to use is definitely a digital public good. What's the biggest source of such data? Okay, Busy Yatra is settled. But now let's think bigger. Is Wikipedia a digital public good? Yeah, we think about it. So it's really not some. So I think that I think India has obviously taken the lead as far as doing lots of interesting things in digital public goods, which are called as India Stack, kind of loosely called as India Stack. But there are digital public goods all over the world, right? And it's not just. And I think that you need to think about something which is created, which is freely usable by people on. Yes. Yes, but that is somewhat of, so I would actually, there are actually open mapping solutions that are there. Google Maps is interesting because it is obviously everybody uses it. So it becomes a de facto standard. But the truth is that, for example, and as a consumer we never see it. But for example, it was maybe 2 years ago that Google significantly raised the price of maps for enterprises. And now that's something that normally in a digital public good you wouldn't think about that in that way. So I think it's important to kind of at least, if I can get to think about what is a digital public good, I go to some more formal definitions of that. How do I move slides? Okay. So I think in the end the definition is interesting. So a digital technology is something which is has something that's electronic, right? It is electronic tools or systems or devices that can actually either generate, transform, store, and information, and that's digital. A public good is a commodity or service that is provided to all people in society, right? And either in certain cases, can be provided by a government, can be provided by an organization, and it is provided for the obviously digital public good. Somebody has paid to make the digital public good created, but that is provided for the benefit of society, and that's really. So now, I hope I was able to explain what is a digital public good. Now, we come, of course, today the topic of the entire session today is AI, right? So let's see. And so, now one question is, does someone want to, after all the talks that have happened today, want to have defined what AI is? Is somebody younger? Would you take a cut of that? Okay. Okay, that's nobody? Anybody? What's anybody brave? Of course. And there is no correct. I would be the last person to claim that there is a defined definition for AI. I think, it has been true, certainly from the year of 2010, I think is when deep learning for the first time became something that people said that for the first time there was this thing known as ImageNet. The first time that deep learning actually became something that people were. Of course, the field of AI has existed for 50 years before that, but ImageNet, yes. Did I say something else? Okay, I said you mentioned this one again. I mean, it. And so, okay, and that was actually the beginning of what we call as deep learning. But since then, in the last 15 years, things have basically, exploded, right? And so therefore, and of course, something, and I think that first there were obviously there was a whole bunch of things happening in vision, then many more things happened in natural language processing, and I think and I think this whole and without going into the history of all of these things, something happened last year, which kind of I think created a lot of excitement. And so, can someone talk about what that was that happened last year? Okay, ChatGPT. Okay. Okay, what is ChatGPT? Can someone answer that question? What is ChatGPT and why is it important? Or maybe it's not important. Anybody wants to answer that question?
It's an AI chatbot.
Okay, it's an AI chatbot. And why is that different? I mean, there were AI chatbots, 15 years before that, right? No, we don't know. I'm not even making that value judgment here. I'm not even making that value judgment here. All I'm saying is that what did it do for the first time? Okay, and you think that we could have made we could have called made a database call and actually gotten access to information before, right? What's different? Ask questions. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. So the word is, you can ask your questions in natural language, and the answers are also in natural language. So does that mean that, and I don't know the answer to this question, so I think the reason that it excited people is that it was giving answers, truthful or not, that only humans could give before, right? And that's really what was the change. And I think that's and I think that's really one of the things that's so exciting and so challenging about this, right? I mean, because right now, if you actually, and I think we're going to talk both from some of the risks and some of the benefits of something like that. Is that the same?
Is the comment?
Yes.
If the people ask 8 questions, you will give the same answer.
Actually not true. Not true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the answers were so similar.
Maybe they weren't using ChatGPT, or they did not use it wisely. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is very important without discrimination and yes, yes. You're absolutely right. And I think that I've taken from this level from the DPC Alliance, which is the original definition, but without discrimination is a very key point, right? That is really one of the properties of a digital public good, right? And that's something that okay, let's move on a little bit, and let's say that there are many ways that you can actually make DPC, but there are certain properties, and especially when certain properties are there. In general, a digital public good would use open source. Now, that's not true, right? Clearly, for example, is not open source. Right? I mean, where used open source software, but it's not. Or the other thing is, I think, as someone said, many of these massive sets of data that are available, that they typically use open data. I think about something like Wikipedia, it's a significant amount of open data. Now, does that mean, now clearly, as we see, like, if you look at the latest at ChatGPT has two problems, right? One problem is it is not open source, right? We don't even know it is actually what ChatGPT is actually one of the most closely guarded secrets in the valley. In the valley. But the second thing is that ChatGPT was trained on a massive amount of data. That is very clear, right? But we don't know what's data it was trained on, which is interesting, right? So therefore now there is this collection of things which used, and certainly legally, I'm not sure that in the end we assume that it was done legally. But the point is we still don't know really what it was. And in the end, see, the benefits of AI models are so significant that we have to use them. But then, under what constraints, in what way? And I think that is the part of the question that I'm trying to answer here. This is not what I normally talk about. That's what we're talking about here. And I think that how do you kind of establish standards and establish contexts when there is a technology that is this powerful, and actually this not just this powerful, it is also not super hard for multiple people to do. In fact, that's what's so exciting in the world of large language models and foundation models today, that in the last 8 months or 9 months since ChatGPT has come, there are so many people doing so many things, and I don't know how many people have heard about this GPT-4B model. I mean, I don't know if people have heard about it, right? I've not even seen. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm that qualified to do it, but I think it So I think one of the questions that's been asked out front here is, how many of you know what the difference between machine learning and deep learning is? Okay. So first, someone wants to
done by itself, by availability of data. Machine learning using deep learning using self-learning.
So, I personally, and there are others, is that machine learning typically uses well-engineered features. Okay, that you're actually trying to explicitly create some features and then use those features to predict something else. Okay, so therefore, typically in machine learning, you tend to, while in deep learning, there are multiple differences, where you're actually using the raw data and the network by itself, okay, is able to train to solve a particular problem. That's one kind of thing. Now, the one thing that you said is that I think maybe you were trying to mention the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning, right? Supervised learning is, I give you a number of examples, and maybe it's a classification problem, or maybe it's a regression problem, and I don't know if we're going down a more complex thing. But the question is that you are given some examples, and the network is trained using those examples, right? So therefore, one of the most complex things when you are trying to do supervised learning is that the time-consuming things is that you have to create these examples, right? You have to, and they're examples. Now, it is the interesting thing is, and I think that most of the recent advances, especially in recent advances, have been where people have moved from supervised learning to a little thing known as self-supervised learning. In the end, you're actually still doing a supervised learning, but you're not solving the problem that you finally want to solve. You're actually trying to solve some other problem whose answer is known, is well known, so that you don't need to actually spend a lot of human effort to actually do that. So, I don't know, one of the most seminal papers was a paper called BERT from Google in 2017. And what they did was the interesting thing was, they, instead of training the model on a specific task, like answering a question or telling a sentiment or opinion, what they actually did was, they gave it a task. They gave it all the documents that are there in the web. And then what they did was, they masked out a few words. And the job of the network was to predict those words. So now this you could do very cheaply because you know the answer, right? And so therefore the entire process, you now suddenly have a much larger amount of data to actually pre-train your model. And that's now become most foundational models that we talk about always have what is known as pre-training, where you are training it not on any specific task, you are training it on something very generic, and that's something that, for example, if you look at GPT class models, in any basically kind of text, I assume pretty much, even though GPT is a text model, I believe that they have taken all audio and converted to text also, and there is all kinds of and basically everything is used to train the model. Now that's what's known as pre-training. And pre-training is something that it's a huge amount of compute, and tends to be depending on, and these models are getting bigger and bigger, and so it's something that as models get bigger, you end up, the proof required to do some of these kinds of things increases significantly. But the truth is that, especially but once you have this pre-trained model, that pre-trained model has to actually be fine-tuned, okay, to solve a particular problem. And then you can either do supervised fine-tuning, which is actually using real examples for the problem that you want to solve, or you could do interesting things like, but what we have found out, and this is kind of the interesting thing, is that as you make the models bigger, okay, the amount of data you need to fine-tune it to do a certain task actually comes down. And that is a very, very interesting property that these things have. And I think some people have said that really in the end it looks like these models have become what is known as a universal function approximator, and that is it's a crazy thing to actually have to think about. But I think that the amount of effort taken to make it work on a certain task is anyway, when we were put digital public goods and got up to be so I think it's interesting, right? I think here I'm talking a little bit from all digital public goods are actually designed to meet certain needs standards. And I think that, I think most of these things are really what make them open. Now, if you want to think about this context in AI, right? How do I actually make something an AI in a digital public good? I do want it to be, I desperately do want it to be a digital public good. But if you want it to be a digital public good, can it meet these requirements? Some of them are actually quite simple to meet. But one of the interesting things that are is actually an understanding of the data that was used to create these models, right? And how does that relate to both data protection, data security, as well as data privacy. Right? These are some of the key things that when you actually want to use something like a AI and make it part of a digital public good, then you actually need to kind of understand these things. And I think these are challenges because the various teams are off to the races, they're doing various things. And I think that's very important that when we think, and if we have to take AI as a public good, then we have to take a slightly different view on this. So, yes. 5 minutes, okay. So anyway, the interesting thing is this, right? If you look at AI, right, there are three kinds of things, right? So the AI has now the ability, and literally, and I see it basically taking all data that exists and ingesting it and making basically part of the AI model, and then we are creating models that are larger than ever and using a very significant amount of compute power to do so. So it's important, right? So we need to, as if I'm going to use AI as a digital public good, I need to align these three things, right? And by the way, one of the biggest things, the biggest breakthroughs in ChatGPT was the fact, and why they felt that people feel that answers are better, is actually this concept of alignments, and alignments to a human preference. And that was actually one of the last breakthroughs which happened, which was called reinforcement learning based on human feedback, actually provided the last, the piece in there that of course, I think there are lots of things that have happened since there, but going into that is probably beyond the scope of what we are talking today. And I think that of course the other part is mitigate the availability, right? I think one of the things that's going to happen is interesting, right? I think for many years we have been saying data is the new oil, but I think the LLMs have actually proved this. They're actually taken in all the data and they can do absolutely amazing things. And I think that's something that understanding of how this availability of data, right, to actually build LLMs and also have guardrails. Because how many of you know about hallucinations in AI? How many of you know about hallucinations? Who knows about hallucinations? Anybody knows about hallucinations? Do you know what a hallucination is? Yeah, so tell me what is a hallucination? Yeah. Okay, that's a good answer. No, but in the context of large language model, do you know what a hallucination is? Yeah, so it has things that are simply not true, right? It imagines things, and these large language models are certainly capable of doing those kinds of things. Now, in certain areas, maybe it's obviously you cannot have any hallucinations, right? Especially if you're trying to think. Yeah. It's not available. Open data is not available. It's not available. So we want to make it. Yeah. Yeah. In addition, so I think two things that are. And I think that as we study this, we understand better ourselves every day. There is obviously the models. The models are actually fairly open, fairly well known. There's not, now there is new magic that keeps coming, but that's actually goes into the open source very, very quickly. The second part is the data. Now data we have not built systematically in the world. There is nothing that is there which actually gets data in a form that is, and then not just, it's interesting, just to give the data. How you actually massage the data to make something that is effective is still there are many, many tricks. And I think most of the companies who are actually working in these areas have figured out some trick on how to actually transform the data into some form so that they can actually gain some benefit in this. Yes, I think so. I think so. Yes, no, absolutely. And I think that, so I think these are, and I think that both those things are. Now, I think I'll skip because we have a last. So I think the interesting thing that, we're here in India, right? And I think that if you look at Silicon Valley, all kinds of crazy things are happening with these large language models. But I think what we can do is, I think one of the things that there are obviously going to be people who are going to build these extremely large models running after, artificial general intelligence. And I think that obviously that's one way that you can go for, but the kinds of, the investment in things, those kinds of things are actually much more at a very different order of magnitude. But I think India should actually figure out about differentiated data. Okay? What does differentiated data means? Data that is Indian in nature, right? I mean, I think it can be anything. It can be our classical text, or it can be a YouTube video made by people explaining so many things. We are the biggest creators of that kind of content. And all of that is actually differentiated Indian data, right? And how do you actually leverage those kinds of data to things? The other thing which I believe is while we look at things like artificial intelligence, they are going to use extremely large models and extremely complex things. But I think we can have small-sized models which do specific tasks and do it even better than before, and that's something that's important to do. And of course, I think this is something that I have said for at least a year, more than a year, that we need to have the compute in the country as basically as significant amount of, because if you don't have the compute, that is table stakes. You cannot play this game, and if you don't have the compute. And the truth is that the way the compute is set up today in the country, it is not. You don't have access to the people, the young kids who can do this. Of course. See, I do not believe that we are talking about it being available as free. I think it should be available at cost. It should be available, and there are enormous amount of data sets that are here in the country which can actually which no one knew how to use before, and now you can use these kinds of things. And these kind of things that you must have this as I don't know. Today, people know about the GPU wars. That's literally getting a GPU is like finding gold. That's some of the high-end GPUs that are there. And certainly in India, it's very, very restricted. Very restricted. And of course, I think in India we have all the tools. I mean, I think that I've been looking at this space in the last. We have people, all the pieces here, and we can actually. And I think the goal really in India should become that we have to be the largest users of AI. Okay, that's actually rather than and as a nation, if we become the largest users of AI, all these other things, and how we use AI is very different from the GPTs of the world. That's something that. And the last slide, it's because I myself am changing from a person working on DPGs for so many years to actually, doing a startup. Starting with my startup, but I think that, we're going to talk about at least the thought process of things that we think are important. That we actually should create big things. The first thing is, of course, we need to create what is a large language model app platform. Yeah. So I think one of the things that is important, right, is we want everybody to use AI, right? When we want everybody to use AI means an AI app should be created by somebody who does not know how to program. That is literally and that's when I can basically. So right now, how many of you have used ChatGPT? Okay, very good. How many of you have actually written a prompt? Okay? How many of you think you're a prompt engineer? Okay, but still, I think, by the way, if you haven't played in the world of prompts, you must go and play in the world of prompts. It is really exciting. Maybe you'll go down but I think it's a very interesting way because this large language model, it really will answer based upon what you give it. And I think the whole game is how to actually sophisticate this. So the interesting thing is that we believe that programming has been reduced to something that is extremely simple. And if I am a product, I am a business owner, I should be able to write my business logic literally, without doing programming. And that's really what we want to be able to make possible. And I want to be able to deploy it on the platforms that everybody uses, like a WhatsApp or whatever. So that's really the thought process of where this is. We need to have the other thing is we need to have locally relevant models. And I think that's something that's very important. And I think that voice is how we talk. And I think that voice and building that combining voice with these large language models and those which work in all Indian languages. By the way, just so that I should just give the thing, I was advising for the Fashini project, and we basically developed a whole bunch of Indian language, AI tools, the pre-LLM AI tools that actually work on all Indian languages. And I think that now we need to move this thing to the LLM world and create basically voice-based things that work that large language models. And of course, you need to be able to have infrastructure as well as to run these things efficiently. But one of the things that I can say is that these models, when a smaller large language model, it's still a couple of orders magnitude smaller than maybe what the largest AI models are, but still they require a significant amount of compute, and you need to continuously optimize right down to the GPU level. Right? So if we are to be a country which is going to leverage this whole Gen AI space, we need to play in all the stacks. Right down from how do you make leveraging the GPUs the best, to how do you actually make models that are relevant to solve Indian problems the best, and of course how do you get everybody to use this in the best possible way. And I think that's I will leave on this positive note.
No, I know, you know better than I do that China and Singapore, which creates like ChatGPT. Whether we need in creating a ChatGPT kind of given all the languages, of course, ChatGPT itself might be depending on
So let me just say this, that, and we are still in stealth mode, but let me just say this, that one of the things that we felt that there needs to be this thing coming out of India. And for the longest time, I've been working in government and open source projects for 15 years. I just said that I need to go and just do this because it was not possible to do this in the non-profit because things are going so fast. So there are, as I said, I'm leading a team which is aiming to do this. There are others too, but I think that we hope to announce certain things on this in the coming months. Okay.
So, one more question. I want to differentiate between ChatGPT, Bard, Bing, and Copilot, which only is the best to use. And can we start as a project to make it relevant for including the language that we have and both things in different languages available? So, do we not have a setting for that?
No. So I think the AI, the impact of it and using of it is something very, very important. And somehow, as as part of this community and as part of the country, we have to figure out how to come together. It's because it's a lot of people who need to come together. Many of the ingredients are there, and I can, as far as this is India is a rich country, we have to figure out how to get our acts in the tournaments. But yeah, so I think that, see, so you were asking about the differences between the different models. See, every day a new model comes, right? So therefore, if I would like to say, the recent thing was, AIed came out, then, OpenAI itself reached before, which is significantly better. Then the whole open source thing came, starting with Llama and Llama 2 from Meta, and which actually I think are very nice models. For example, Abu Dhabi released what was called the Falcon model, which was a large language model, which for a while was among the best in the world. And China has so many large language models that are there, coming out there. Now each country obviously does it. China is certainly looking at Chinese being the first thing, and so therefore I think the large language models that come out of India will be focused on Indian languages. And I think, despite the fact that we're now in the commercial entity, I say that the first model we create, we will open source because we think it's important. So I think the question here, and maybe we'll ask people, have you ever given ChatGPT a paradox and asked whether it is right or wrong? This is they're pretty clever, you should try it. I think, but as kids, I think this is a great. How many of you know what a paradox is? Can someone give an example of a paradox? Yes, what is a paradox?
As an example, we take the black hole paradox, for example.
Okay.
For example, we travel back in time.
For example, we travel back in time and unfortunately our grandfather dies. So will we be born? That's a paradox. So time travel is the cause.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't. So I'm not aware of that specific marker. Okay. Yeah. So an example given here of a paradox is that everybody goes to the barber for a shave. The barber never shaves themselves. The question is who shaves the barbers? That's a yeah.
So then we should talk we break for lunch, and we really thanks Vivek for a very fascinating presentation. And on behalf of the AIed, I report to